Representative Sean Casten just demolished Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent during a House Financial Services Committee hearing by reading Bessent's own words back to him from a January 2024 letter where he explicitly told investors that tariffs are inflationary. After Bessent spent the hearing telling Democrats he never said tariffs cause inflation, Casten pulled out the documentary evidence and asked point blank, "Do you want to correct what you said, or did you lie?" Watch how a congressman with receipts forces a cabinet secretary to admit he was wrong under oath.
Thank you for being here today, Mr. Bessent. Appreciate your patience with us. Since the U.S. captured President Maduro, the Trump administration has been selling Venezuelan oil. Secretary Wright has said that's going to continue indefinitely. The president's January 9th executive order said that those funds are the sovereign property of Venezuela, but has directed you, the Treasury Secretary, to hold those assets in custody to facilitate disbursements transfers as directed by the Secretary of State. As I've gone through the 91 specific trusts that you have the statutory authority to oversee, none of those have any relationship to Venezuelan oil. So can you help us understand under what statutory authority, or what statutory authority is Treasury relying on to exercise the discretionary control over natural resources and sovereign assets of another country?
Treasury has no control over the...
I'm just asking about what statutory authority you rely on.
Again, we are operating under an agreement between state and energy that we are not involved.
No, but the executive order said that the Treasury Secretary is holding those assets in custody. That's a specific language there, and is facilitating disbursements. Under what authority are you acting?
I will get back to you with the exact authority, but it is under agreement with state.
Let me just clarify, because my concern is that the executive order cites IEPA. IEPA specifically says that you have to be engaged in hostilities with a country for IEPA to trigger that claim. Secretary Rubio said that we are not at war with Venezuela. I would agree. I'm glad we're not at war. So unless you disagree with Secretary Rubio, I'm unclear under what legal authority the United States has to control or disperse those assets.
Well, I would believe that the IEPA authority would act for a period of time for a
not unless we're not that's not
for a transition.
Well, look, that's not true. But please provide in writing what you're doing there, because I want to get to why I think that's material. Last week, Secretary Rubio also said that the $200 million in proceeds was sitting in a Qatari bank that was owned by Venezuela. He went on to say the Treasury has a written agreement with Venezuela's interim government to review the monthly budget request for payments from that account. I come back to where the authority comes. What statutory authority are you using to exercise custody indirectly through a third country and direct the release of funds from those offshore accounts?
The IEPA.
That's not in IEPA. You're managing, okay, so if you're managing a third country, not in IEPA, and please do provide us with the legal guidance, because this matters. What controls are you putting to audit those flows? Because as you know, the Venezuelan government still has a lot of shady people. How are you controlling the dispersion of those flows so that they don't go back to some of the shady characters that the president is concerned about in Venezuela? What is the audit process?
Again, we will be bringing in outside auditors for this, and the Venezuelan government will be producing.
Do you have an agreement in place right now for those auditors?
Sorry?
Do you have an agreement for that audit in place right now?
Not at present.
Okay, because Secretary Rubio, when he was asked that question before the Senate, he said that the Treasury had handled the agreement that he would be providing to the Senate committee. Are you saying that Secretary Rubio was incorrect, or that you're not aware of the agreement that Treasury directed according to Secretary
I'm
Rubio?
saying I'm not aware of the agreement.
Okay, so Secretary Rubio said he would provide that to the Senate committee. Can you please coordinate with Secretary Rubio and give us your word to provide us what Secretary Rubio is providing? Because he is alleging that that was done under
with pleasure, Congressman. And okay. Just so you know, the goal here, it's been 30 days.
I want to just move, reclaim my time, because the concern I have is that this would be considered a fraudulent conveyance. I have a specific concern that we've entered into contracts with companies like Vitol, who have pled guilty to bribery and all sorts of nefarious actors. If I was a company buying stolen goods and we didn't have statutory authority, I'm going to have a lot of creditors coming after me. One last thing, sir. I want to read you a quote. Trump will pursue a weak dollar policy rather than implementing tariffs. Tariffs are inflationary and would strengthen the dollar. Do you recognize that quote?
I believe you're referring to a letter that I wrote, and
yes.
Tariffs could be inflationary.
No, it says tariffs are inflationary.
Yep. You know what?
You had said to the chairwoman, I'd like to introduce into the record a January 31, 2024 letter from, quote, Scott Bessent and the Key Square team to your partners, where that quote comes from.
Without objection.
Do you want to correct what you said to the ranking member when you specifically said that you did not say tariffs are inflationary?
Well, I think she referenced a letter in the summer of something, not that particular.
No, I think you disparaged the New York Times.
Sorry?
You said tariffs are inflationary.
Sorry?
You said tariffs are inflationary.
Tariffs.
Do you want to correct what you said to the ranking member, or did you lie?
If I was mistaken, I want to correct it. And I was also mistaken when I said that tariffs could be inflationary, because
Gentleman's time has expired.
I've seen inflation drop to 2.1%.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Let me break down what's really going on here. Scott Bessent went into that House Financial Services Committee hearing with one job: defend Donald Trump's tariff policies without admitting they're driving up prices for American families. And Representative Sean Casten just caught him red-handed lying about what he wrote to his own investors less than 2 years ago. Earlier in that same hearing, Ranking Member Maxine Waters had pressed Bessent on whether tariffs cause inflation. Bessent's response was carefully hedged. He said tariffs could be inflationary. Notice that language. Not are inflationary, could be. As if there's serious debate among economists about whether import taxes raise consumer prices. As if this is some theoretical possibility rather than basic economic reality that every serious economist acknowledges. Waters pushed back hard, referencing reporting that Bessent himself had previously stated tariffs are inflationary, and Bessent essentially denied it. He tried to walk it back, minimize it, suggest the media was mischaracterizing his position. That's when Sean Casten stepped in with the smoking gun. Casten began by reading a direct quote: Trump will pursue a weak dollar policy through tariffs. Tariffs are inflationary and would strengthen the dollar. Then he asked the question that every member of Congress should ask when they have documentary evidence. Do you recognize that quote? And watch what Bessent does. He doesn't immediately own it. He hedges again. I think you're referring to a letter I wrote, and I said that tariffs could be inflationary. Even when confronted with his own words, he's still trying to soften the language, still trying to maintain this fiction that he never definitively stated tariffs cause inflation. That's when Casten drops the hammer. No, it says tariffs are inflationary. I would like to submit for the record a letter dated January 31st, 2024, from Bessent and the Key Square team to your partners. He's got the actual document, the date, the recipients. This isn't media spin. This isn't taken out of context. This is Bessent's own written analysis to the people who invested money with him. And then Casten asks the question that crystallizes the entire exchange. Do you want to correct what you said to the ranking member, where you pretty clearly said you didn't say tariffs are inflationary, or did you lie? Think about the position Bessent is in at this moment. He's under oath. There's a document with his name on it stating exactly what Casten said it states. He can see where this is going. If he continues denying it, Casten will read the full letter into the congressional record. It'll be preserved for history. So Bessent does the only thing he can do. He admits it. If I was mistaken, I want to correct it. I also acknowledge that I was wrong in stating that tariffs could be inflationary. But notice what he's doing even in his admission. He's still framing it as tariffs could be inflationary, downplaying the certainty of his original statement. Even when caught lying, he can't bring himself to fully acknowledge what he wrote. So why does this matter? Because it exposes the fundamental dishonesty at the heart of this administration's economic messaging. Scott Bessent is not some political hack who doesn't understand economics. This man ran Key Square Capital Management, a hedge fund managing billions of dollars. He worked for George Soros. He has a degree from Yale. He absolutely understands that tariffs function as taxes on imported goods, that importers pass those costs to consumers, and that this shows up as higher prices across the economy. When he wrote that letter to his investors in January 2024, he was being honest. He was telling the sophisticated financial professionals who trusted him with their money the unvarnished truth about Trump's proposed tariff policies. Tariffs are inflationary and would strengthen the dollar, hardly a good starting point for a U.S. industrial renaissance. That last part is crucial. He wasn't just saying tariffs cause inflation. He was explaining why they're bad policy for achieving the very goals Trump claims to want. But then Trump won the election. Trump nominated Bessent for Treasury Secretary. And suddenly, the man who wrote that tariffs are inflationary and bad for industrial policy is standing in front of Congress defending those exact tariffs and claiming he never said what he demonstrably said in writing. This is like if your doctor wrote you an email saying smoking causes lung cancer and you need to quit immediately. And then 6 months later, when you ask him about it, he says, well, I might have suggested smoking could potentially be associated with certain health risks in some cases. The hedging, the minimizing, the desperate attempt to pretend the clear statement wasn't actually that clear. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine you're applying for a job and you tell your future employer that a certain business strategy is terrible and will lead to disaster. Then that employer offers you the job anyway and implements that exact strategy. Now you have two choices. You can stick to your principles, admit the strategy is flawed, and try to change course. Or you can lie, pretend you never said what you said, and hope nobody kept the receipts. Bessent chose option 2, and Casten brought the receipts. The reason Casten's questioning is so effective is because it's not based on opinion or interpretation. It's based on Bessent's own documented words. There's no ambiguity here. Wall Street Journal's Nick Timiraos confirmed the letter exists and quoted it directly. Tariffs are inflationary and would strengthen the dollar. Hardly a good starting point for a U.S. industrial renaissance. The tariff gun will always be loaded and on the table, but rarely discharged. That last sentence is particularly telling. In January 2024, Bessent was basically saying Trump will threaten tariffs as negotiating leverage, but won't actually implement them broadly because doing so would be economically damaging. Bessent understood that widespread tariffs would hurt the very goals Trump claimed to pursue. And now, as Treasury Secretary, he's defending exactly the policy he warned against. And it's not just Bessent who knows tariffs drive inflation. It's documented across multiple authoritative sources. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell stated in December 2025 that most of the overshoot above the Fed's 2% inflation target is really the result of tariffs. Not could be the result, is the result. The central bank chair looking at comprehensive economic data directly attributing inflation overshooting targets to Trump's tariff policies. Goldman Sachs economists projected that tariffs contributed to a 0.5 percentage point increase in inflation in 2025. They estimate inflation could rise by 0.3 of a percentage point within the first 6 months of 2026 as tariff effects continue flowing through the economy. These aren't partisan Democrats making political arguments. This is one of the most respected investment banks in the world analyzing economic data. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development issued a report in March 2025 warning that Trump's tariffs were inflicting serious economic damage and reigniting inflation. They revised down global growth forecasts specifically because of tariff impacts. They noted that uncertainty created by tariff threats was making businesses hesitant to invest, which is essential for economic growth. So when Bessent stands in front of Congress and tries to claim tariffs aren't inflationary, he's not just contradicting his own written analysis. He's contradicting the Federal Reserve Chair, Goldman Sachs, the OECD, and virtually every credible economic forecaster who has studied this issue. What we're really seeing here is part of a much larger pattern. This administration prioritizes political loyalty over empirical truth. They demand that officials publicly defend policies those officials privately know are flawed, and they're willing to lie even under oath, even when documentary evidence exists, because they're betting most people won't dig deep enough to find the contradictions. Casten's questioning matters because it makes the lie impossible to maintain. When you have the actual document dated and signed stating the opposite of what the official is claiming under oath, you force a moment of accountability. Bessent had to choose, keep lying and have the letter read into the congressional record or admit he was wrong. He chose admission, but only because continued denial was no longer viable. And I want everyone watching to think carefully about who gets hurt by this dishonesty. It's not Sean Casten. He's a United States congressman with a strong district who will continue doing oversight regardless of whether cabinet officials cooperate. It's not even really Scott Bessent, though he certainly damaged his credibility with this performance. The real victims are American families who are paying higher prices because of tariff policies that the Treasury Secretary privately knows are inflationary but publicly defends anyway. It's the single parent stretching their grocery budget further every month because imported goods cost more. It's the small business owner facing higher input costs that they can't fully pass on to customers without losing business. It's the retirees on fixed incomes watching their purchasing power erode as prices rise. These are the people being failed when the person in charge of managing the American economy won't level with Congress or the public about basic economic realities. These are the people getting hurt when officials lie about their own documented positions because political loyalty matters more than telling the truth. The bottom line is this. Scott Bessent wrote in January 2024 that tariffs are inflationary and bad for industrial policy. He told that truth to his investors when their money was on the line. But when he became Trump's Treasury Secretary, when political loyalty was on the line, he lied to Congress about what he wrote. Sean Casten produced the receipts, forced Bessent to admit the contradiction, and exposed exactly what happens when an administration values narrative control over honest economic analysis. And when you're willing to lie about something as fundamental and documented as your own written words from less than 2 years ago, what else are you lying about? What other economic projections are being manipulated? What other warnings are being suppressed? Those are the questions every American should be asking right now, one contradicted letter at a time. If you found this detailed breakdown valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos where we examine the documentary evidence instead of accepting political spin. Share this with someone who needs to understand what's really happening with tariffs and inflation. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.